What is going on, FTN? Joe Metz, Adam Pfeifer here to break down the Buffalo Bills game. Just kidding. We're here with the resident Bills fan breaking down the Saturday NBA main slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. Adam, I have to applaud the fact that you are here. I know you have a big game this evening. How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm under the weather. Bills are on in about 2 hours. I'm nervous. I'm sick, but we talked about it on the earlier in the week. This is we got playoff football, and I'm obviously still very invested in the Bills, but I'm also so just into the NBA. So being able to talk some hoops, being able to talk, the Cavs are on the slate, so I get to talk about a couple All Stars. It's a good day. As long as the Bills win, it'll remain a good day.
I like it. Yeah, we have a 9-game slate. There's actually one game, not on the main slate. Bucks and Raptors tipping off in just under a half hour here. DraftKings decided to leave it off. FanDuel has an all-day slate, but the main 9-game slate is what we as a pair will be going over. In Portland at Washington, this game carries a 7.5-point consensus spread in favor of the home team. 215.5 total. Dame Lillard, CJ McCollum, Norman Powell, the big three still out. Larry Nance and Cody Zeller also out for Portland. Meanwhile, we still have Bradley Beal out in the health and safety protocols. Davis Bertans also out for the Wizards. So there's two pieces here that I expect to see, three probably with Kuzma, even at an elevated price. That will probably come in at some heightened ownership in Kuzma, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Anthony Simons. So I'll kick it to you, Adam. Where are you starting in this game?
Yeah, it's probably Dinwiddie. I know his last game was a little bit underwhelming, but that was the second end of a back-to-back, and it's nice to see him playing the back-to-backs. But you look at his numbers with Beal off the floor this season, usage rate is at 26%. It's up by almost 5%. The assist rate is massive. It's 23%, easily leads the team. And the prices come up, but I still think at 6'8", like, he's perfectly viable, especially against a bad Portland team. I think the last two games have been the games where Beal has been out. In those games, Dinwiddie's averaging around 83, 84 touches per game, which is up from his season average of around, I think it's like 70 or so. So obviously more responsibility for him. Yeah, I mean, we keep saying that Kyle Kuzma's too expensive, and like the rebounds have come down a little bit, but then he keeps scoring and doing everything else. Right. So maybe, and we talked about this on the FTN NBA podcast, like maybe we just need to accept the fact that Kyle Kuzma's a different player in Washington with a better role, and he's just better. And again, like still no Bradley Beal, so it's not like, he's still got a massive 26% usage rate, 1.14 fantasy points per minute without Beal. And yeah, Thomas Bryant's back, but he's going to play, 12 to 15 minutes maybe. So there will still be plenty of rebounding opportunities for Kuzma. Maybe we should just, when Beal's back and Thomas Bryant's there and everybody's there, he probably won't be an AK player, but right now I think he probably should be.
Yeah, I think of the guys that I mentioned, between him, Dinwiddie, and Simons, Kuzma will be the least popular. I still think I prefer Dinwiddie even at the elevated ownership. I just, we've gone over on multiple shows. You and Zach have talked about it. Zach and I have talked about it. We talked about it on the podcast. Like his rates and his averages without Beal on the court this season, over 40 fantasy points per game at his price, it's just too good of a bargain to pass up for me. Regardless of the ownership, I'll differentiate elsewhere. I agree with your sentiment on Kuzma. I don't think he's overpriced. I just don't know if I'll get there based on roster construction. DraftKings is a little out of their mind today with price, positioning LeBron at center only.
Dude, you were in shock when I broke that news to you this morning.
Well, I was like, okay, like he's started 3 consecutive.
He should literally be every position except for shooting guard.
Correct.
I don't understand why give him center eligibility. That's fine. Right. Don't take everything else away, because now you have to debate. Like, we're going to see lineups where it's like, okay, you play Jokic and LeBron. It's like, okay, you can play another center. No, you can't. Like,
I know. I like, that's the frustrating part with it, and it affects the rest of your build. And because of that, I think Kuzma is almost a little more in play now because you don't have someone like LeBron occupying a forward spot.
But then it also kind of impacts, like, because I have some interest in Yusuf Nurkic, but
Yep.
again, it's just like
It's
now all of a
really
sudden you
hard
have
to.
now all of a sudden you have a center slate that already has Jokic.
Yep.
Embiid's questionable. We'll see if he plays. Now LeBron is a center. You have Vucevic without Levine and Lonzo. Like you have Jarrett Allen.
You'll
So it's
have
like
Drummond if
right.
Embiid's out. You have the Spurs value centers who are no more like they're all three. If you include Thad Young, all three at 3-1 or less. It's really hard to. I mean, I think that makes Nurkic a really good tournament play because he's not going to be owned.
And I
But
like I've talked about this before, but obviously with no Lillard, no McCollum, and then lately with no Nance and Powell, the last 5 games he's averaging 8 post ups per game, which is behind Jokic, Valanciunas, and Embiid. That's it. And prior to that, over the course of the entire season, he was averaging like 3 post ups per game. So they're playing through him a lot more. And as we talked about with him a ton, if he plays 30, if he can get up to 35 minutes, the ceiling is 50, 55 fantasy points because he's so efficient. And Washington's actually been a bottom 5 post-up defense, so it's a good spot, but it's, the price is up now, whereas earlier in the week or so, he was a little bit underpriced. It's tough.
yeah, I agree. I pulled up the optimizer to kind of see where they stand on Nurkic, and right now he is projected to be the 6th highest owned player on the slate, one of 6 players above 20% projected ownership at 22.9. I wonder how it will make you feel when I tell you that Nikola Jokic is projecting for under 18% owned. That makes me feel pretty damn good. But before we head on to the value here, we talked about Nurkic. Anthony Simons projecting to be the 2nd highest owned player behind Dinwiddie on the slate, both just over 29%. What's your take on Simons? Because he's been downright phenomenal with these guys out for Portland.
Yeah, it's interesting because Simons and Dinwiddie are both in similar spots, except Simons has multiple players out. And as good as Bradley Beal is for Washington, being without Lillard and McCollum is a lot different. And he's, like you said, he's been phenomenal.
And Norman Powell, too.
Right. And like Dinwiddie's floor is pretty safe, but Simons has shown the floor and the ceiling. So just in a vacuum, I prefer Simons over Dinwiddie. It's hard not to like him at 7,200. You can make the case he should be, at a couple $100 more, but it's the fact is 7,200 is not a price where I'm afraid to go back to him, just given the fact that the usage rate should be. I'd be shocked if his usage rate was under 30% in this game alone.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is, you look at like who he's. I assume Ben McLemore will draw another start. That is really the only other high usage guy to worry about in terms of having the ball in his hands. Like Nurkic can be a high usage guy, but he obviously relies on someone like Simons to get the ball in his hands.
Covington's a spot up shooter.
Correct. So I like Simons quite a bit, even for his price. Obviously, ownership is meh. We'll talk about another guy later, but I'll mention now. Like I prefer to pivot to Darius Garland if you can, from an ownership standpoint. But I think Simons is a phenomenal player. Are you looking at any of the value in this game? I know you mentioned Covington with Nance out. Ben McLemore still sub 5K with these wings out. Dennis Smith will still get some run even behind Simons. I think for me, of the value, and like Corey Kispert starting, I think McLemore would be my favorite, but I don't love any of it just because there's so much elsewhere on the slate.
Yeah, it would be McLemore, then maybe Kispert, but that's like a third, fourth tier kind of value play. And I've been on this stream for weeks talking about Daniel Gafford, but it's time where it's probably over. Thomas Bryant's back. We'll continue to play 12 to 15 minutes, and then it'll even go higher and higher from there. Rui Hachimura's back. He'll play some minutes in the front court. So Daniel Gafford, it was fun, but it's probably over for fantasy for him.
Yeah, I do agree. It's just gonna be too crowded there. So moving on, we have a Kevin Knox revenge game on the docket with him reportedly available to make his debut for the Hawks, who are 1.5 point consensus favorites at home over the Knicks with a 214 point total. Derrick Rose, Kemba Walker remain out. Cam Reddish has not been cleared to make his Knicks debut. Danilo Gallinari questionable. Bojan Bogdanovic game time decision, and Clint Capella, I believe, is questionable or doubtful.
It's doubtful.
Doubtful. Okay. So off the bat, like Atlanta's very shorthanded, and the thing that sticks out the most is that's a flat 3K DeAndre Hunter, which makes absolutely no sense.
Yep.
He's going to be chalky. Like I brought the ownership projections earlier, and he is right behind Dinwiddie and Simons at 27% as a third highest projected play in terms of ownership. I understand people may be concerned about minutes. It's second end of a back-to-back. He's been here for 2 games. He's been back 2 games from injury, but 2 factors for me. One, he's literally the minimum price. If he doesn't play 30 minutes, he plays 23 minutes.
Yeah,
it's going to be hard for him not to do enough. And even if one of Gallo or Bogdanovic are out, I don't see Kevin Knox coming in and getting 28 minutes. Like, DeAndre Hunter is going to have to pick up slack. He started last game, played 30 minutes. I just don't. In single entry and cash, it just seems like a value that you just take it and run with it and differentiate elsewhere.
I mean, Bogdanovic played last game. Gallo played over 30 minutes last game, and Hunter still played 30 minutes.
Yep.
So, and if one of them it doesn't matter. Again, like you said, he's $3K flat. Didn't make any sense, the price drop. And if you are worried, first of all, again, you shouldn't be because he's minimum price. But if say you were worried, if Gallinari's active, play him at 3,700 if you're a little bit worried. He played 34 minutes last game, had almost 30 fantasy points. So for me, like, that's where I start from this entire game. Trae Young is under 10K. I think that's interesting. And whenever he's under 10K, the price has dropped quite a bit after a couple lackluster games from him. And then I'm not going to the front court here with Capella out. John Collins to me. John Collins reminds me of Jaren Jackson Jr. when Steven Adams is healthy. It's just like he rarely has strong rebounding games. And he's talked about, he's been very frustrated with his usage and involvement in this team. Apparently he's on the trade block. Like, talented player, but he rarely hits his ceiling for fantasy. Like, you rarely see John Collins get 40 fantasy points. He's usually in that 35 to 38 range. And at 7,100, that won't crush you, but I just think there's better plays. Like for me, like Evan Mobley's always around the same price as him. Mobley has the same floor. And I think he has a higher ceiling because he's actually going to play 39 minutes, unlike Collins. So for me, if you get the Trae Young and then some of the value wings, that's where I'm interested at from the Atlanta side.
Yeah, I agree. Okongwu at mid 4K, there's just no point given his volatility. They are
unless you take a shot on Gorgie Jang at minimum salary and hope he gets 20 minutes. He played 15 last game, but it's obviously risky.
Yeah, and I mean he's also a strong permanent producer as we've seen for the last 5-6 years. Yeah, that's kind of my sentiment with Atlanta as well. I don't think my interest in Hunter wavers much with regarding the status of these wings. To be honest,
if one of them gets ruled out, his roster percentage goes probably into the mid-30s at least. Like, I
think at that point, Kevin Huerter becomes really interesting as kind of a difference-making pivot because we know the ceiling Kevin Huerter has relative to his salary. If you're strictly looking at ceiling relative to salary, he has a higher ceiling than John Collins does based on their prices. So I like Huerter in that spot quite a bit, assuming one of these guys is out. On the Knicks side, I don't have much interest in this team in general, but the one thing that did stick out is Julius Randle's price is at a point now where I do think he's viable. But as someone said in Discord, like if there's any team that broke Julius Randle, it's the Hawks. Unless you are running, multiple lineups, I think he serves as a direct pivot off of DeRozan. But I don't think in one lineup, even taking into account popularity, I can. With a good conscience, prioritize Randle over DeRozan. Do you feel differently about that?
Kyle Kuzma is doing what what Randle did last year, right now. So
are people ready for that conversation?
I'm just saying, with Beal out, like I think I'd rather just take the savings and play Kuzma, which is crazy. But again, like this is the price where you start to say, okay, Randle's definitely viable. RJ Barrett's a player that I've rarely targeted in DFS because his ceiling has been capped, but we've seen that ceiling finally lately with the injuries to the front court or the back court in New York. He's been over 40 fantasy points in 3 of his last 5. He has a 28% usage rate over the last 3 games, and he's taken over his last 3 22, 20, and 21 field goals, 27.5% usage, over a fantasy point per minute with Rose and Kemba off the floor this season. So he would be my favorite player from this team. And that's probably it. I mean, just not a lot of interest elsewhere. We still see Mitchell Robinson can he's been good the last couple back-to-back double-doubles, but it's hard to use a center spot on Mitchell Robinson, especially now with LeBron James center only, which again will be the theme. But
it's so frustrating. It's tough. RJ Barrett, I know you talked about as someone that's I noticed in your first look his usage rate without these guards. 6.8, I think, is still a fair price. Do you have RJ Barrett interest if you're running, say, one lineup?
Not one, but overall modest interest. I just think we've seen him play, especially with because Rose missed time earlier and Kemba was out of the rotation. So when they were short earlier in the backcourt, we saw more point RJ Barrett, which he's not ever going to be like a facilitating wing where he's getting 8-9 assists a game. But him with the shots he's taking, like I said, 20 plus and 3 straight. With the shots he's already taking, if he can start getting consistently 3, 4, 5 assists, that adds up. So I'm still interested in Barrett just based off the usage and shot volume. But if I'm running one lineup, I won't have RJ Barrett.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I think guys like Alec Burks and Fournier, those two are just like tournament darts for me if you're running 10 to 20 lineups, because like we know both of them can get hot. There's just so much, like Alec Burks in particular has been incredibly hard to predict lately. So let's move on to New Orleans and Brooklyn. There is some value in this game with Nick Claxton ruled out. Let me double check the Vegas data. Brooklyn 5.5 point home favorites, 230.5 total. That seems like a bit of a tight spread even with Kyrie out. So looking at these two, obviously Kyrie out with it being a home game. LaMarcus Aldridge, Nick Claxton, and Joe Harris remain out. Zion obviously out for the Pelicans. But we're at a point now where injury reports are cleaning up a little bit, and it's really nice. So pick a spot where you're starting in this game, if anywhere. I'll pick the spot. Day'Ron Sharpe, he's not going to carry nearly as much ownership as he did last game when he was over 50% rostered. He did flop. Minutes weren't far off from what he has been playing with these front court players out. I think his most realistic output is somewhere between last game and the two previous games. Do you think he's a viable and smart pivot off of all the chalky mid-price centers?
I do think he's viable. I definitely don't know if he's safe. We saw Millsap back in the rotation against the Thunder, 19 minutes. Like, if Millsap plays similar minutes to Sharpe, I think Millsap will just be more efficient. Like we saw him, he almost doubled in 19 minutes. So the front court for this team is definitely not a priority, but like if you're looking for value, it's there. And then I don't think we need to say anything really about Harden and Durant. Pelicans are a good matchup. Obviously, no Kyrie Irving. The usage will flow through those two players. So, there are a lot of 11 K players on this slate. Durant and Harden are both one of them. So, they're obviously perfectly
no
fine.
Roster percentage. Like no one is going to be rostering these guys either.
Yeah, so I have no problem with them. And then New Orleans, I mean, again, like I don't hate, going to Ingram. Joe he got off to such a great start at the beginning of the season. He's kind of slowed down a little bit. Still a decent floor, but just where he's priced at center, like I'd rather play Jarrett Allen. I'd rather play Vucevic. I'd rather play a handful of other centers. So I probably don't get too much Joe, though the matchup is good. I don't hate if you're looking for like a last fit player to put in your lineup. The minutes have been pretty consistent for Herb Jones, and he's been pretty productive for this team at 4,600 on DraftKings. I think you could do a lot worse than that. But outside of that, I mean, Josh Hart at 7K, like the floor is high, but at 7K, do I really want to go there on a 9-game slate? Probably not.
Especially when you look at the 7K range, like you go up, you go down $200. You're at Spencer Dinwiddie. You go up a few
Barrett,
hundred.
6,800. We just talked about.
Simons is only 72 or 74. I mean, you can get up in the same 7K range to Darius Garland at 7.9. I just don't think Josh Hart is the wisest investment on this slate. JoVal is interesting to me. Like 8,300 is like a mouthwatering price if you're looking at his per minute production. Minutes have been a bit more volatile relative to early in the season, like you said. But if there's a matchup where he can really exploit in a short amount of time, it is Brooklyn. My issue with Sharpe on the other side of this game is JoVal. Like this is a matchup that just worries me quite a bit. Like JoVal is not this like world-renowned defender by any means, but he's a center that gets the ball quite a bit down low, can cause a lot of foul issues for a very inexperienced center, and he's a massive body on the other end. I just don't think Day'Ron Sharpe is going to compete well against JoVal, which just kind of has me leaning towards the other value centers. I don't hate Brandon Ingram either for 9-2. Like the volume's going to be there. It's just a matter of how long they can stay in this game. Because if they stay in the game for 3 quarters, he's looking at 35 to 37 minutes, 20 plus shots. I just don't know if I'd go there from running anything less than 10 lineups. Frankly, this game as a whole, I don't have much interest in.
I feel like it's a good, like, if you're running a bunch of lineups, stacking this game in tournaments makes sense because Joval, Ingram both have upside. We know Durant and Harden have upside. And as you mentioned, it'll probably go overlooked given the slate. So that could be an avenue to go to take. But yeah, I agree overall. Like there's more enticing games. But I mean, Brooklyn just lost to Oklahoma City. So it's very possible this game could stay close.
I agree. So let's move on to one of the probably more important games now in the slate, Philly at Miami. Joel Embiid downgraded questionable about an hour ago. Midday downgrades, obviously.
Midday downgrade after a front end of a back-to-back. Pretty telling.
For someone like Embiid, too.
And I think the Sixers play in the early part of the Monday slate, too. So
They do.
I think he's
so. I do, too. And the thing is, like, Miami being a 4-point favorite with the injuries they're dealing with kind of leads me to assume that Embiid is going to sit. Because of that, like, how do you not – I mean, even if we don't get the news pre-lock, I will probably still make my single entry with Andre Drummond at 4-7 because there is so much room to move around to the center position. If that comes out beforehand, though, like, his roster percentage, Andre Drummond is going to be, like, 60% plus, I would assume, right?
Yeah, I mean, like even if Embiid plays, like there are pivots, like you mentioned, in that range at center. Like a Kongwu's there. Herb Jones is center eligible, who we just talked about, who will play minutes. Mitchell Robinson's 4,800, who will play 25 to 30 and has a ceiling of 40 fantasy points if he gets the rebounds and blocks. So like there are definitely pivots. So yeah, I mean, we've seen Drummond reach 7K, 8K earlier in the season when Embiid was out. 47% rebounding rate, 1.25 fantasy points per minute with Embiid off the floor, and he started, I believe, 11 games this season. 8.5 real points per game, but 13.5 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 1.6 blocks. Don't really need to get cute. If we get word that Embiid is out, you just lock in Drummond. But then like the rest of his team's kind of banged up too. No Danny Green, no Matisse Thybulle, no Shake Milton. So minutes should be there for Seth Curry, who's kind of expensive at 6'1", but like if Embiid's out as well, he's going to take a ton of shots. Tyrese Maxey's under 6K. So the rest of his team, given the fact that they're pretty affordable and that Embiid could be out, plus some of the wings are already out, the rest of his team becomes interesting too. It's not just Drummond.
Yeah, I completely agree. If Embiid sits, how would you prioritize the rest of the team? Because 7.5 for Tobias Harris is nice. The issue with Tobias Harris is he's only power forward eligible. Seth Curry 6'1" is interesting to me, and Tyrese Maxey sub 6K is very interesting to me if Embiid sits,
especially because
probably be my priority after
he's played 2 games since coming back from the health and safety protocols. He's played 38 minutes in both of them, so that's pretty encouraging. Yeah, Maxey would be the number 2 player from the Sixers for me pretty easily. I mean, he might even be number 2 if Embiid plays, or number 1 actually if Embiid plays. I just think he's underpriced.
I think he's egregiously cheap,
and with no Shake Milton, it's kind of like Cleveland, right? Darius Garland, they don't have a backup point guard. If Rondo plays, he'll play his 18 minutes. But like the Sixers don't have a backup point guard, so Maxey's playing massive minutes because he's the starter, but then also because they don't have anybody to come off the bench and run the offense. Korkmaz, they don't want running the offense and handling the ball. Like I mentioned, Milton's out. Like so, I just think he's underpriced regardless.
I agree. The thing is, like you said, even if Embiid's in, I think he's in a very, very strong play that will come in very, very contrarian. And he, like, because of his price, like, allows you to do quite a bit. Like, he's only $500 more than Kobe White. So let's flip to the Miami side. Any interest in this team? I think, like, for me, zero. I think if I were to play one player on this team, it would probably be Yurt. But I just, like, the center position is so loaded.
He's been so good. He's literally been
his rebounding rate.
I think it's double-digit rebounds in like 13 straight games for him. It's been
he has 12
ridiculous.
Or more in 11 of his last 12.
Yeah, he's been fantastic. Especially if Embiid's out, like how do you give up a center spot for him with Drummond, with Jokic, with
LeBron.
LeBron James. Again, we'll say it, with Vucevic.
I mean, these Spurs guys like Nurkic, like there's so many guys that I just have no interest in really anyone from this Heat team. So we can move on to the next game on the docket. We have the Cleveland Cavaliers 5-point road favorites against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Cavs coming off of a back-to-back 208.5 total. If anything jumped out the page at me, it is Darius Garland at sub 8K. That just seems dumb.
Yep. There was a stretch where he was like over 9K, and a lot of people were like, this is too much. And now they kind of like got overcorrected. Now he's too cheap at under 8K, back-to-back 50-plus fantasy point games. I wrote about him in the First Look article today, and I kind of mentioned it because they don't have a backup point guard. Rondo's out. Rubio's out for the year. Sexton's been out for the season. He's averaging 93.3 touches per game over his last 7. Only Fred VanVleet's averaging more during that span. And in that same span, he's averaging 8.7 minutes of possession per game, only behind James Harden and Trae Young. He is just playing so many minutes in any competitive game. He's touching the ball at a massive rate. Like, it's just
the
ridiculous.
93+ touches is ridiculous. Like, what was either Jokic? I think Jokic led the league last year, like 102 or 3 per game.
Yeah.
I mean, Capella and Bogdan is out. Capella, we obviously knew was going to be doubtful. Gallinari available to play.
All right, so if you were worried about DeAndre Hunter, you shouldn't have been, but now you can rest assured he'll play at least 27 minutes, which is all you need at minimum salary.
It's ridiculous. But this makes Kevin Huerter a much more attractive target as well.
Yeah.
So Garland. So the intrigue to Garland to me is because typically I feel like on any other slate, him at this price would be a very popular place. Coming in, roster percentage projection at 11.4%. If you compare that to Anthony Simons, who's a bit cheaper at nearly 30%, I would rather go Garland.
I would too. Surprise. I just, again, like, I know Portland doesn't have anybody else either, but Garland's just been so good. And I think we talked about this before we got on the show, but I think this is 3 and 4 nights for Cleveland. So I think the Thunder at home keep this game close. So we've seen anytime there's a close game for Cleveland, Garland's playing 38 minutes. Allen's playing 38 minutes. Mobley's playing 38 minutes, especially given the fact that their backcourt is completely depleted right now. And like Isaac Okoro's back, but he first came back last game. He was limited minutes. So yeah, give me Garland here. And you can correlate it with Jared Allen. We know, like, that's what I love about this Cavaliers, top 3 players. Mobley, you'll get assists to Jared Allen off lobs. Obviously, Garland's going to correlate and get assists with everybody because he's getting all the assists in this team. So, like, you can play Allen and Garland or Mobley and Allen. I probably wouldn't go Mobley and Allen, but because they're going to take rebounds away from each other. But I love Garland. I like Allen a lot on the other side, and I like running it back with SGA because I do think the game stays close. And I think those 3 players, especially the 2 guards, like you mentioned, not going to be very popular on this slate.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Mobley too. I like a lot at his price, and no one is going to play.
Yeah, I was heavy on Mobley last night. He got off to a great start, and then just kind of couldn't score any real points. But
we've seen that a few times this year. But he's also Thunder starters came out, no surprises. SGA, Dort, Giddey, JRE, and Derek Favors. Any interest in this Thunder team whatsoever? I have none.
It's just SGA. Like I like Giddey, but it's just hard to consistently pay at mid 7K price tag for him when SGA is healthy. He does enough in the minutes he gets alongside SGA to still be viable, but against a good Cleveland defense with SGA healthy on a 9-game slate, I think there's just better options.
Yep, I completely agree. So let's move on to a bit of a more interesting game. Chicago at Boston. Boston 6.5-point home favorites, 214-point total. Zach LaVine, Lonzo Ball out. We are going to see a lot of popularity around DeMar DeRozan, Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, and Troy Brown. Obviously, you and I both running one lineup tonight. Who are you prioritizing out of Chicago?
Everybody just mentioned, it's not even just the fact that Lonzo and LaVine are out. Still no Alex Caruso. Obviously, Patrick Williams has been out. Javonte Green's out. So, Troy Brown Jr., how do you not look at him? Similar to
3K.
Yeah, exactly. Similar to DeAndre Hunter, 3K. Kobe White started the second half, 5,200. Should play 33 minutes or so. He's probably the best mid-range play on the slate. And then Iodasumo's played really strong minutes from off the bench as of late anyway, and now he's going to be thrust into more minutes at 3,400. And then, of course, DeRozan. I mean, his usage rate with Lonzo and Levine off the floor is over 40%. His price has come down after a couple back-to-back games. It's just the Chicago Bulls are going to be popular, but when they're missing, 5 key players, you understand why.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I actually think for me, this is not me saying Kobe White's a bad play whatsoever. He's probably the odd one out.
I know where you're going, and I would literally feel the same way.
Tyrese Maxey over Kobe White? That's where I'm going? Yeah, that's 100% where I'm going. Right now
we had a lot of in the Discord yesterday. A lot of the members in Discord were saying like Dennis Schroeder might be a trap, and that absolutely panned out. I wouldn't be surprised if Kobe White was like the trap for tonight.
I mean, the way I have my lineup built right now, I have Drummond and Maxey. And then from Philly, but then my Chicago exposure, I went with DeRozan and Troy Brown. Those are my 1 and 2 for Chicago. Someone said, am I okay with pairing Kobe White and Nikola Vucevic? Yeah, I honestly think you can pair any of these starters now. Vucevic is going to be incredibly contrarian. I think that's a benefit, but at the same time, we've talked about how loaded the center position is. It does make you immediately different playing a guy like that because it limits what you can do with those center positions. You only have 2 spots. So I think of the value, Troy Brown is probably my favorite than Io on the Bulls. Let's flip to the Boston side. Any interest here? Like Dennis Schroeder could not have had a worse game last night, so he's obviously in a bounce back spot at low popularity, but I just don't know if I can go anywhere here.
I mean, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are always overlooked. They offer upside, but I feel like this is like 10 slates in a row for Boston where it's just like they have not been anywhere close to my favorite play in the slate. And that's just where I'm at with Boston. They're healthy other than Marcus Smart. Tatum's taking a ton of shots. He'll be very overlooked, and there's upside, but that's pretty much how I've looked at Boston for the last week or so.
Yep, I completely agree. So let's move on. We have Joel Embiid is a game time decision. Oh, it's so annoying. It's so annoying.
Yeah.
God. So let's move on to the Clippers and Spurs. Derek White, questionable. I believe he's missed 5 games in the health and safety protocols. He's cleared them. Questionable, obviously conditioning. Jakob Poeltl, doubtful. On the other side, Luke Kennard remains out. Justice Winslow out. Both the stars for the Clippers remain out. And I believe Isaiah Hartenstein is questionable. So that could obviously shake up the front court just a little bit. But the Spurs centers here, like you have one. This is like the worst situation for daily fantasy. You have 3 viable players that can play 5 for them in this game. And you also have a coach who just loves to run a circus and just not tell anyone what he's going to do, roll out the most wacky shit that no one sees coming. Like, what are you doing with this front court right
now? I don't think you have to go there. Again, with the centers we talked about, now I'd feel a lot more confident about that if we knew that Embiid was going to be out. But I mean, against the Clippers, this could be a spot where like Thaddeus Young could play a lot of center in this game. And if you played, Jock Landale or something, that would crush you. So if you take a shot on the Spurs front court here, I think it's viable, but we've talked about a lot of value to mid-range centers. I don't think you have to go to the Spurs front court on this slate, especially because it's the Spurs and it's a 9-game slate, and it's, whether you play, Thaddeus Young's the only player you can play that gives you power forward eligibility on DraftKings, whereas everybody else is center only. So that also is just so crucial. So I don't think I'm going to the Spurs front court, to be honest.
Yeah, the only way, so as of right now, at my single entry setup, the only way I go to the Spurs front court is if Embiid is ruled in and I pivot off Fonda Drummond, I'll just go down to one of them. But you look at the matchup against the Clippers, I do think this caters more towards Jock Landale and Drew Eubanks than it does Thad Young because of the presence of Zubac, Serge, and now potentially Isaiah Hartenstein. These are all 3 more traditional centers. They don't play a ton of small ball with like Marcus Morris at the 5. So I think if I'm prioritizing them, I think it's going to be in the order that their roster percentage probably is, and that's going to be Landale, Eubanks, and Thad Young. But like you said, this is a complete toss-up to me, and I'm not comfortable with it whatsoever. I'd still play all three over Day'Ron Sharpe, but if you're looking positions aside, these guys are behind Io DeSunmu, Troy Brown, DeAndre Hunter. Like, there's a lot of other 3K value that I prefer over these guys. DeJounte Murray, 10-6. Historically very good against the Clippers. Very good in general. If Derek White's out, I think he's a phenomenal play that no one is going to use. Is this price a bit too high if Derek White's back or no?
Maybe a tad. I don't really have anything else to say about DeJounte Murray anymore. He's unbelievable. And, yeah, nobody's going to play him. If Derek White is in, probably don't go to him at all. But if you play DeJounte Murray on any slate right now, I think you're fine. Like, he's just been that good. And then that's it, though, for me from the Spurs. Like, again, situation dependent if you go to the value at power forward or center, but that's probably it from the Spurs.
Yep, I completely agree. So for me, I'll be honest, Clippers are not one team I've landed on at all on this slate.
Yeah, it would be, if anybody, Marcus Morris, just because the shot volume usage has been there, but I'm not even excited about that because the price has come up to nearly $7K. So,
yeah, I completely agree. So let's move on to we have 2 games left, then we'll get to questions. Making good time here. Lakers and Nuggets, the 2 highest priced centers on the slate right now. Denver 4-point home favorites, 225-point total. Let's start at the top. Jokic 12-6, his highest price this season. LeBron 11-9. Both right now, Jokic is projecting for sub 15% popularity, and LeBron, I have to search him because he's so far down. I guess 12.7%. Who do you want? Like, do you want in your single entry? Are you prioritizing getting one of these 2 guys in your lineup?
It's tough because there's so many good plays in the mid range. But I look at the matchup, right? Obviously, he's like the best player in fantasy, so it doesn't really matter. But like, if Dwight Howard's out, they've already been playing LeBron at center. Who the hell is going to stop Jokic? Like,
That's exactly.
So, if I'm spending up for one of the 2, it is Jokic. But obviously, LeBron's been fantastic. It's just so, like, I just don't see how, DeAndre Jordan will play some minutes if Howard's out, but it's like, okay, LeBron at center, he has no shot against Jokic.
I completely agree. And on the flip side, though,
I was going to say,
just don't think anyone has a shot at LeBron. I mean,
it's no coincidence that he's playing small ball center lately, and he's been going for 30 real points like it's nothing. Like, there's just not a center in the world that can keep up with LeBron even at age 38.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just quick addressing the Discord. They're talking about like roster construction with pivoting with the Embiid news. Herm has a good idea to just pivot down to Robin Lopez from Drummond if Embiid's in. What I'm saying, Herm, is that if Amba is ruled in, we are likely going to get that news prior to the Spurs lock. So even if that's the case, then you also have another potential. Like, you don't love the Spurs value, but there is the opportunity to pivot down there. So I guess the rest of this Denver team we'll start with before we go to the Lakers. JaMychal Green today, I believe, entered the health and safety protocols. To me, that does make Jeff Green kind of interesting at 3.6. I don't love it, but there is upside there. I just don't know if I won't prioritize him over a Troy Brown, DeAndre Hunter.
That's the problem.
I do and the problem is, like, he's forward eligible, only doesn't have center eligibility, so you can't necessarily directly prioritize him over the Spurs value. But in a vacuum, I think he's a fine play relative to the Spurs value.
I agree. That's literally what I was going to say about the rest of this team.
So rest of the Lakers team. Any love for Russell Westbrook right now? This guy, my thoughts on Westbrook. 9.6 is an enticing price, but just bear with me here. Last 4 games, 28.6% from the field, 16.7% from the field, 14.3% from the field. Like, you can't play him right now, in my opinion. Like, you just can't. He sucks.
I'm not. If you're stacking this game as a late night hammer, sure, but like, I'm not paying 9.6 for Westbrook when I can get Garland at 7.9. or
Yeah.
Anthony Simons at 7. It's just you don't feel good about it. Like Malik Monk's been this team's second best player, and that's where the Lakers season's at.
That is terrifying. But
It's
Malik
true
Monk's
though.
been good. It is true. He's been good. And the thing is, for a large part of the season, Carmelo Anthony was their second best player.
And he's questionable.
He is. Yeah, I have no interest in the rest of this Lakers team. I think from this game as a whole, my priority goes 1A Jokic, 1B LeBron, and 2 is probably Jeff Green, which is really
I agree.
sad. That's really alarming. Will Barton confirmed in. Does that do anything for you or no?
Just makes me, when the slate first opened, last night, this morning, you could have maybe looked at Austin Rivers' value, but between the value that's already opened up, plus now that Barton's going to play, that's just all it does for me. Really, it doesn't put me on Barton or anything like that.
Yep, I completely agree. So let's round out the Orlando-Dallas game. We can leave about 10-15 minutes for questions. Dallas 11.5-point home favorites, 210-point total against the Magic. Porzingis has cleared protocols, unlikely to play today. Wendell Carter Jr. still out for Orlando. Mo Bamba questionable. The guards in Markelle Fultz and MCW have not played a game this year. They won't play tonight. I actually think Luka is incredibly interesting here. I think his form in terms of fantasy production has come back into what we expect, and he is not going to have anyone rostering him tonight. That is my appeal to Luka. What are your thoughts on Luka and the rest of this Mavs team?
It's Luka or bust, and I agree. That's literally it's almost my take from this entire game, because if Bamba's out, I'm not playing him we give him where he's priced at center on this slate. If he's out, Robin Lopez is still viable, but last night's game left a bad taste in my mouth for sure.
Doesn't that kind of helps? For me, at least, no one, let me pull up the optimizer and see what
it does. But at what point is Robin Lopez at 4,400 going to break the slate at low, at low roster percentage compared to some of the other centers on the slate, especially if we get Drummond, especially that's real. I think Robin Lopez's ceiling is what he did two games ago, 16 and 11. And
yeah, and that's a good point. At 4-4, at what point, it's Robin Lopez?
Yeah, at what point is shit, I didn't have Robin Lopez tonight. I'm screwed.
For what it's worth, projected roster percentage, 0.3%. That would obviously probably go up a bit if Bamba is ruled out before lock, which I don't think will happen in the next 15 minutes. But I don't see it. If that's what we're projecting right now, there's no way it gets up to 8 to 10%. I would probably assume 5 to 6, given the other center options on this slate. What about... So anyone like Cole Anthony, anyone like this for the Magic? This is a really ugly game from a fantasy perspective because of the pace more than anything.
I mean, Cole Anthony, I like overall, but nobody's going to play him. He's priced right around Garland and Simons and Dinwiddie, a little bit more than Dinwiddie, obviously, but right around the other players. I don't know. Didn't do much last game. I don't think the return of Jalen Suggs is going to impact him to this extent, but just not a priority for me on the slate at all.
Yeah, I agree. His price enticing, but the big thing with me for Cole Anthony isn't obviously his stock with the other high usage guys now, but I'd rather play Darius Garland. I'd rather play Anthony Simons. I'd rather go all the way down to Tyrese Maxey from a per dollar standpoint, whether Embiid's in or out. I just can't get there today, and he burned me yesterday as well. So we have a little over 10 minutes left for questions. So if there are questions in the Discord, I'm going to start scrolling back because I know we missed a lot of them. Let's see here. How do you guys rank the spend ups? So in terms of spend ups, there's a lot of guys over 10K. I guess let's do your 5 spend ups in order, 1 to 5.
Are we ranking just the players above 10K?
Yeah.
I would go Jokic. I'll go Jokic, Luka, LeBron, Durant, Harden.
Yeah, I like it. I think I go Jokic, Luka, LeBron, and then DeJounte Murray, Durant, Harden is where I think I go. We also did just get an update. Jakob Pearl now a game time decision, which is it's
Stay away.
yeah, it's does not instill any desire in me to play that front court. Like obviously still a good chance he misses, but that is an upgrade from doubtful. So I'm gonna go run through more questions here. Let's see here. Any Montrezl Harrell love for 5K? That's on FanDuel, I believe. For me, no.
Yeah, not particularly.
Okay. Jokic, RJ Barrett, and Keldon Johnson, or Evan Mobley, DeMar DeRozan, and Vucevic.
Wow, that's tough.
That's tough because Jokic is in it.
I know.
I think I lean the second without Jokic. I really do.
The second was Mobley, Vucevic, and who?
DeRozan.
Yeah, that's a lot of fantasy points right there.
I know, because the thing is, you look at those two groupings, and like RJ Barrett and Keldon Johnson can very well go out and get you 22 to 25 fantasy points.
Yeah,
I
like Barrett, but it's not like he's a lock. It's not like he's getting enough peripherals consistently to be like, oh, the floor's 35, and then if he keeps scoring like he's been scoring, he gets 60. Like his ceiling is still probably like 45, like it's been, and his floor has been like 20.
Yeah. Luka and Spencer Dinwiddie, or Joker and Kobe White. I'm on Luka and Spencer Dinwiddie over Joker and Kobe White.
I'll lean second side. That's close though.
Okay. Derek White expected to have a minutes limit off of the bench.
Okay.
So that I think that keeps DeJounte firmly in play. Let me go through questions here. Let's see. Are you okay with Huerter and Hunter in the same lineup? I think that's fine. I'm okay with it. I don't think they counteract each other too much. Like they're not expensive enough where I'm worried about how negatively they correlate, to be honest. DeJounte seems like a good play tonight, or would you prefer James Harden at that price? And that's on FanDuel. I still prefer DeJounte.
I'll go Harden.
Okay. Steelers fan is asking us, Troy, White, and DDR. Is that too many Bulls? I do not think so.
No.
I agree. Anyone going back to Sharp? I'm going to be honest. I'm not going back to him like willingly, but I kind of feel a little better about Day'Ron Sharp than the Spurs centers right now with that late upgrade to Jakob Poeltl. The sub 4K centers scared the shit out of me tonight. Herb Jones okay for 6K on FanDuel. I don't think you need to do that.
Yeah, DraftKings is different, but FanDuel 6K. I don't think you have to go there.
Yeah, I agree. Someone said, how do you say Io's last name? Is it Desunmu? Did I say that wrong?
I think it's pronounced DeSumo.
DeSumo? Whatever it is. I should probably look that up for the next stream. White or Herter?
I'm assuming it's Kobe White.
Kobe White or Herter. I lean Kobe White.
So do I.
And so the only potential con, so will the masses. And that's if you're looking for leverage, it's Herter, but I lean Tyrese Maxey out of the three. Let's keep the questions rolling. Let me see if I have any in my DMs. I do have some. Let's see. Queisenberg hopped up on the painkillers in my DMs. Hope you're feeling better, Zach.
Yeah. I haven't had to have my wisdom teeth taken out yet, so let's keep it that way.
Someone just sent me their lineup in the DMs. It's my single entry lineup. I like it. So obviously I like it. So yes, Josh, apparently I duped you, but maybe you duped me. I don't know. Let's take a look at some roster percentage. Keep throwing the questions in. We have about 5-10 minutes left of the stream until slate locks. I'm trying to load the optimizer right now. There we go. So as of right now, point per dollar projections 1 to 5. Day'Ron Sharp projecting for the highest point per dollar production at 7.19 and 17% roster percentage. That's interesting. Jock Landale second at 7x 24%. Troy Brown third, DeAndre Hunter 4, Danilo Gallinari 5. So Day'Ron Sharp, interesting. I don't know if I like that. Robert Covington or Nasir Little on FanDuel.
I think Little has a higher ceiling.
I do too. I also think I think Little's floor is higher as well, if I'm being honest.
It's always tough with Covington because like you tend to rely on steals and blocks, but he almost always gets steals and blocks. So it's like that obviously adds up over on FanDuel especially. But it's tough.
Man, I am now thinking I'm going to play Day'Ron Sharp. God damn it. Oh, it's so annoying. Let me see what else we have here. We already answered the White or Herder. Jock Landale season question mark. I don't know, man. That's a Greg Popovich question, but yeah. I legit am really struggling to figure out how these minutes could shake out if Pirtle's out. I think it'd be like Landale 22, Eubanks 18. Thad,
I mean, we could also
like
see
15.
we could also see a lot of Marcus Morris versus Thad Young at center.
I know that's the problem. And the thing is, if that's the case, a 3K Thad Young would end up being a phenomenal play in hindsight because he is of the three the best per minute.
But you just don't have to go there because Troy Brown and DeAndre Hunter are 3K.
Exactly. It's a difficult. Yeah, it's a difficult spot right now. Burks, Reggie, or Maxey. So I assume that's Reggie Jackson. It's Maxey by quite.
I was going to say I don't even think it's remotely close for me.
That's a land. Like I would probably go Maxey like 3 tiers above, then Alec Burks, then Reggie Jackson is probably mine.
I would go 3 tiers. I would have Maxey 3 tiers above both of them, and then if Embiid gets rolled out, I'd put it like 7 tiers.
Correct. Like you said, like Maxey, I think is an ultra strong play regardless of
absolutely
Embiid's status. But if he's out, man, oh man, watch out. So I'm basing my lineup as if Embiid's out. I don't know if game time decision is considered an upgrade or a downgrade relative to where he was.
I don't think it's an upgrade or downgrade.
I think it's just an update.
I think it's just an update. Like, by the way, we still don't know.
Which is every night Joel Embiid is a questionable thing. I think the wise decision would be to sit him, like you said, second leg of a back-to-back, early game on Monday, give him 2 days to rest, but it is Doc Rivers. So Sharp or Io?
Io.
I actually lean Sharp. That's close. But the thing, I guess to me, it depends how many other Bulls you have in your lineup. If you're running 4 Bulls, then I would probably go Sharp.
I mean, what would you say to that? 3 Bulls?
Yeah, I think so. 4 is a little too many. But like the thing is, the only reason I'm setting it, I don't love having 3, but they're cheap enough where it's not going to kill you if you do.
And it's weird too because like, say you go for the value with like Io and Troy Brown, and then you see DeRozan there. It's like, okay, well, like I'm not going to not play DeRozan with a 40% usage rate with Levine off the floor because I already have 2 Bulls.
Right. So he already has Kobe White and Troy Brown. No DeRozan. Does that change Io or Sharp for you at all? I don't think it changes a ton for me. I'm still Sharp either way.
For me, it's just I have more concern about Sharp potentially just because like it could be Millsap back in the rotation like he was last game. Wouldn't shock me at all.
My only concern with that,
maybe not against Joval though.
That's my thing. Like I think it's going to be Sharp as long as he's able to stay on the court.
Yeah.
Projections on Kevin Huerter with no Bogdan. Right now on the optimizer, he is projecting for 23.6 fantasy points, 33 minutes, 5.1 X value at 2.9% ownership.
I have a question.
Yep.
Will the Cavs have 2 All-Stars? I didn't put Garland in, but I'm still
no. We both put Jared Allen in. My answer would be I think they should. I don't think they will.
They won't.
They won't.
But Garland keeps playing like this the next couple games.
Look at how loaded the backcourt in the East is.
Yeah, the
thing is, one thing we can obviously they're being conservative with Zach LaVine, but if it does end up being something more serious, maybe Garland will make it. Garland does deserve it. I think he 100% deserves it. But like, I'm not going to throw Garland in there over Drew Holiday. I'm not going to throw him over, obviously, Trae Young.
And then LaMelo's close. We talked about it. LaMelo's really close.
I would put him over Bradley Beal.
Yeah.
I think anyone would, though, to be honest. Herm made a good point. He said if you're looking at value, punting big men over punting point guards is typically a good strategy because they have a higher double equity. That's
exactly. It's a good point.
It's a very good point.
And like, especially in that case, like Ayo Dosunmu is not running point for them. It's going to be DeRozan and Kobe White. So
yeah, it's a good point. So he might
very unlikely to see 10 assists from Ayo Dosunmu.
Yeah, I mean, we're very likely to see 10 assists from anyone on the Bulls tonight. That's a good point. Good point.
It might just be post up Vucevic and then ISO DeRozan and then just everybody else watch.
Where would you rank DeRozan among ISO players in the NBA right now? He's got to be top 5, right?
Well, Kawhi's not playing, so that helps.
Yeah, active players right now.
I mean, Dame's not playing either, so yeah, I would say top 5, right? I mean, Harden, Durant, like Curry. I don't view as an ISO player. That's like
I don't view Giannis as an ISO player either.
Right, like and Curry can ISO, but like Curry's more off ball, off screen, stuff like that. So yeah, DeRozan's always been in that that role where he just dominates in the mid range. He can get a bucket whenever, but right now he's on a different level. So yeah, I'd put him top 5. I mean, Garland's obviously 1, and then you just go from there.
Yep.
That was a joke, by the way. Relax, everyone.
I know. Hey, Garland has been phenomenal with his shot.
Trying to get his jersey. I texted you this morning, and he's like, they don't have Mobley and Garland in the ones I want, which is like, I love Jarrett Allen, but like, I don't like 31 as a number for a jersey. I don't know. It just doesn't look clean to me.
I know what you mean. It's like a fullback or something.
Right. Safety.
Someone said Ayo and Garland or Kobe White and Tyrese Maxey. Ooh, that's tough. I think I still lean White and Maxey, to be honest, but I really like Garland.
I'm leaning Garland because I have some slight concerns with Kobe White.
Yeah, that's fair. FMB. Let me double check if we don't have any questions. We're about 2 minutes from lock. We are actually. Doesn't DraftKings count you down? I have my lineup up. I don't know why it's not counting down.
1 minute and 3 seconds.
Okay, so we got a minute left. I really want. So I have like a pivot if Embiid's in, but it then takes me from Luka to Jokic, which I don't hate at all. Like, I'm not mad about that.
Luka to Jokic.
But I am really interested to see what Luka's number will be tonight in terms of roster percentage.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'll run the projections one more time for those listening.
I just need the Cavs to win and more importantly Buffalo to win, and I'll be happy tonight.
What's the status of that Bengals game?
Bengals are up 23-13 with a minute left in the third. The Raiders have the ball 1st and 10 at Cincinnati's 25, it looks like.
Jock Landale is now the 5th highest projected player in terms of roster percentage.
Derek Carr just threw a pass to Brian Edwards down to the 10. Yeah, I'm completely out on this. I'm not playing the Spurs. So
no, neither am I. I'd rather play Day'Ron Sharpe than all 3 of them, to be honest, or 4, I guess, if you include Ayo Dosunmu 22%, Luka 19% now. Holy cow, I don't like that. Jokic 17. Where's LeBron? 12.
Dude, that's center only. Just
Ooh.
I'm sitting there right in the first look, and I'm like, "Where's LeBron?" I did the same thing early in the year when remember when DeRozan was first power forward eligible only.
Yes.
I was like, "Where's DeRozan?" I did the same thing with LeBron. I was like, "Okay, well, he's definitely not shooting guard. He should be every other position, and he wasn't.
In the middle of,
he should literally be shooting guard.
I know.
Or he should literally be every position except shooting guard.
Except shooting guard. Correct.
And he's center only. What do they do with baseball? You have to play a certain amount of games at a position, and then you get eligibility.
Yeah. I don't know why they don't do that for basketball.
LeBron's
he played 3 games at
center, and he's only
he
center.
started 3 games at center. Correct.
Yeah.
Day'Ron Sharpe confirmed starting for the Nets. So is Kessler Edwards in place of Kyrie. Patty Mills are on the start as well. Not something we've seen lately. So thank you all for joining us, Adam. Always a pleasure. I'll be in Discord here and there, up to the NBA news, really, and then
I'll be in there about until 8:15 when the Bills kick off.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will too. We'll do that. So we'll be in Discord. Hit us in Discord. Follow us on Twitter, Pfeifer24, JMets34. And if you have not Subscribe to FTN Daily. Use code FTNTV for 15% off. If you opt for the monthly, it takes 15% off of every month, not just the first month. Come join us. It is a good time. And as always,
let's get these beans.